Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. I'm super excited to have you here today because we're going to map out this massive, kind of mind-boggling web of influence. We've all seen the Hollywood myth, right? You know the one. Dramatic music swells, the all-powerful president sitting alone in a dimly lit Oval Office single-handedly steering the fate of the entire nation. But, well, we're going to completely demystify that today. We're looking right past that famous desk to uncover the secret power behind the White House. Which brings us to a pretty huge question. Does the president really control all that power? And it's a totally valid thing to ask. On the surface, the answer seems obvious. Just one signature from that office can change massive federal policies. One order can literally move military forces across the globe, and a single speech, it can shake global financial markets in seconds. But while the final output is singular, there is this massive, hidden machinery that dictates what actually reaches the president's desk in the first place. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our agenda for today's journey. We're looking at 1. The inner circle, 2. The security machine, 3. Congress and bureaucracy, 4. Money and influence, and lastly, 5. The media loop. We're essentially going to peel this onion, layer by layer, starting from the absolute center and zooming all the way out. So layer 1, the inner circle, the Oval Office and the people in the room. And this brilliantly illustrates the biggest misconception about how presidential power actually works on a day-to-day basis. There's this huge gap between what we imagine and what's actually going on. Our imagination gives us, the Oval Office, a desk, and a telephone. But the reality, it's thousands of officials, advisors, lawyers, and analysts. Information doesn't just magically teleport into the president's brain. It has to travel through this vast human system. Way before a decision is ever made, political appointees, economic officials, and diplomats have already filtered and framed that information. So here's how this plays out in real life. Step 1, multiple opinions exist out there. Step 2, access is granted to a select few. And step 3, that filtered information finally reaches the president. Now, what's genuinely fascinating here is how White House staff, we're talking policy directors, communications folks, senior advisors, they wield immense power. But they don't do it through some shadowy conspiracy. It's honestly just logistics. By controlling who gets access, curating the information, and managing exactly when a meeting happens, they make sure their specific ideas have a way better chance of being heard. All right, zooming out to layer 2, the security machine, intelligence, and the military. So in the second layer, it's absolutely crucial to understand that when a crisis hits, the president relies really heavily on the Department of Defense and military commanders. And within that machine, we have the intelligence community. Their job is analysis. Actually, to be more precise, it's the interpretation of collected facts, satellite images, and intercepted communications to figure out their actual meaning and the level of threat. America has this enormous intelligence apparatus collecting highly ambiguous data. A satellite image shows movement, but what does it mean? An intercepted communication mentions a random date. Is that a real threat? How these analysts present this information, whether they emphasize extreme danger or highlight uncertainty, heavily restricts or expands the president's available options. Which brings us to a pretty profound vulnerability. As our sources point out, the most powerful person in the room may still be making decisions based on imperfect information. Just imagine a global crisis where the president has only hours, or maybe even minutes to act. In that hyper-compressed time frame, whoever is providing the intelligence becomes an inescapable part of the decision-making process. The president is relying entirely on the picture painted by those analysts. Expanding out to layer 3, Congress and bureaucracy, the co-equal branches and civil servants. It's honestly so easy to forget that the government has 3 co-equal branches. Presidential power is not absolute by any stretch. It's a constant, daily negotiation heavily limited by both the legislative and judicial branches. You can issue a presidential order incredibly fast, but actually changing the government? Yeah, that is much, much harder. Congress holds the purse strings, the money, and they write the legislation. They also run committee oversight. And hey, even if the president completely bypasses Congress, thousands of career civil servants in the federal bureaucracy have to actually implement the order. Writing rules, establishing budgets, executing a new policy, that can take months or literally years. It moves at what we affectionately call the speed of government. Moving on to layer 4, money and influence, lobbyists, billionaires, and access. Now we're looking at the highly debated role of money in politics. Companies, labor unions, and advocacy groups spend huge amounts of cash to meet lawmakers, provide specialized research, and push for legislation.
So it definitely begs the question, does every group have equal access to power? Now, objectively, lobbying is a constitutionally protected form of participation. It's the right to petition the government. And policymakers do genuinely need info from the industries they regulate. But there is a stark systemic imbalance here. Massive corporations come equipped with literal armies of lawyers, policy experts, and lobbyists. Small communities or regular citizens, they usually have none of those resources. So it creates an ecosystem where organized, well-funded interests just have a much louder voice in the room.
But before we go assuming one single group runs the whole show, take a look at these competing centers of power: business, labor, media, courts, Congress, states, federal agencies, and, of course, voters. Despite the obvious influence of tech billionaires and wealthy donors, no single group secretly controls America. It's just a really crowded, noisy, and highly competitive room. The president is constantly navigating between all these different factions, trying to balance their competing demands. Finally, Layer 5, the media loop: communication and public opinion.
So zooming out to our outermost layer, it's clear presidents don't just govern, they have to communicate. Every single speech, press conference, interview, or social media post is part of a bigger strategy to shape the national narrative, and they are caught in this relentless feedback loop. Step 1, politics influences the news. Step 2, the news influences public opinion. And Step 3, public opinion influences politicians. So the crucial point is that power doesn't just flow downward from Washington to the public. It frequently moves in the exact opposite direction. Presidential advisors meticulously monitor voter reactions and news cycles, and those reactions directly alter whatever choices the White House makes next.
When we pull all these layers together, we hit the core thesis of this entire explainer. Power is deciding what information gets heard. True influence in Washington isn't necessarily being the guy who gives the final order. True influence is deciding which issues get attention in the first place and framing which choices even appear possible to the ultimate decision maker. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. The next time you see the president step up to a podium and announce a major decision, don't just ask what was decided. Look a little deeper at the massive, intricate systems surrounding that famous desk and ask yourself, who influenced the choices that were available in the first place? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope you found this structural look at power as fascinating as I did. Keep questioning and keep learning.